Hello. It is so good to be back here. I trust that you all had a very Merry Christmas, and we at Paranormal Odyssey wish you the veriest, happiest of New Year's as well. I wanted to come on here and tell you a couple of encounter stories. There will be two. So I will go straight into the second one after I finish the first one. But thank you for your patience, and I do hope that you enjoy these encounters. Just for a better understanding of my surroundings, I'm from Kentucky. Lots of wooded area, and people love their guns, including me. I used to not believe that there was unknown stuff in the woods. I thought maybe Bigfoot, maybe, could be real, but I severely doubted it. After this happened, I know there is something unknown out there. I had just bought my first AR-15 style rifle, a Ruger AR 556 for anyone who cares. And I bought a 60 round drum magazine for it at Gander Mountain while they were going out of business because why not? Reading up on the drum, I read they were amazing and rarely had any issues at all. This will be important later. A few days after I got it, I finally decided to take it out for a test drive and sight in my gun a little better. Here's where everything went to hell in a handbasket. As I said above, Kentucky is super wooded. 3/4 of the land I lived on was just thick woods. There was a main path for driving our gator and few small paths our cows had made in the woods. I decided to walk along our creek that had a small path half cleared by our cows. At the end of the path is a big field our cows like to graze in and where I sight in guns when the cows are not there. As soon as I crossed the fence to go to the field, I instantly felt like I was being watched closely. I brushed it off because I've walked back there 1,000 times before and never have been bothered by anything. So I keep walking and I ignore the feeling of being watched, but at the same time, I am still very aware of the feeling. I know I feel like I'm being watched, but I wasn't giving it any noticeable attention. The walk to the field along the creek is a very short walk, maybe 2 minutes at a slow pace. The further I walked, the more intense the feeling got, like I was getting closer to whatever it was that was watching me. About halfway there, the feeling got so intense I couldn't ignore it anymore. The drum magazine I had with me was unloaded, so I stopped and started loading it. I only bought 20 rounds with me because I was just going to sight in my gun, and 20 should have been plenty. So now I'm stopped, paying extremely close attention to what's going on around me and loading my magazine. The exact moment I started putting rounds in the drum, I smelled something dead, like it had been dead for a while and just rotting in the sun. I started looking around, and right behind me was what was left of a possum. It was torn to pieces. It was almost like it was placed there for me to find. The only thing was, it looked like it had only been dead for maybe a day at most. And what I was smelling seemed like it was far more decomposed. This obviously didn't set well with me, so I double timed it on the magazine loading. I guess I should have taken the dead possum as a last chance to turn around. But I decided to keep going. I had never had any problems back there before, so I assumed my brain was just being paranoid. I was almost to the field when I saw it. I was at the end of the creek, and the feeling of being watched was unbearable. Just as I was near the end of the creek and the edge of the woods, I heard a splash in the water. Me, being on edge, immediately turned toward the noise. Gun ready, but no round in the chamber. Walking down the creek away from me was something I will never forget. at least 8 feet tall and probably taller, very skinny. Imagine a grown man that weighs 120 pounds. Now stretch him out to be 8 feet tall, but his body width stays the same. It had very long arms and it walked on 2 legs. Its skin was stretched tightly across its body. It made no noise, aside from the splash when it stepped in the creek while it walked. It also had a very weird walk, almost like a waddle, but taking large steps. But that could have been because it was on a muddy creek bank. It was also a light brown color, almost like the color of a deer. That's all I can remember about it right now. Now I know why I felt like I was being watched. Magazine loaded, bolt ready to send around in the chamber. Remember what I said about the magazine being extremely reliable? Well, I pressed the bolt release on the gun to chamber around just in case this monster thing decides to attack. I did not intend on striking first. And the round gets stuck somehow and doesn't even budge out of the magazine. I had never used that magazine before, so it didn't fail from heavy use. A bolt closing from a gun has enough force to break your finger. So why didn't this magazine work? My only guess is that thing had something to do with it. The magazine never worked right again, and I had to return it to Magpul. Needless to say, I didn't tell them this happened. I just told them the magazine failed several times. Anyway, back to this thing. Gun jammed on the first round, which is usually the easiest. The thing books it out of there without running or making a noise. I had just long enough exposure to it to get the details I provided about it. Now, for assumptions, it happened about late May last year. I still have the emails from Magpul regarding the drums, so I'm using those as a reference because after this, I needed something reliable. As for what the creature was, me and a friend who knows more about this stuff than I do have decided that it could have been a Wendigo. The reason we are thinking Wendigo is because everything I describe matches them near perfectly. I had read that they are incredibly thin and tall, have a stench of death that follows them everywhere, which explains the smell of the possum. They're very fast, can be several colors, light brown included, and that they sometimes violently kill other animals to scare humans. Again, the possum. The only thing that we couldn't come up with its behavior is why am I still alive? Wendigos are supposed to be incredibly aggressive. Aside from watching me, it did nothing. It didn't try to attack me or confront me. It ran from me like it was scared or trying to draw me where it wanted me. This being said, I have never had another encounter with it. I have gone to the same field, taking the same path, expecting to be watched, and have not gotten that feeling at all as strongly as that day. Something was out there, and you cannot convince me otherwise. I've tried to trick myself into thinking I'm being watched out there, and it's still no comparison between that day. That encounter was from a Mr. John Fina 6 years ago from Reddit. So I don't know, to me, kind of sounds like a juvenile Bigfoot, but that's just my opinion. You can let me know what you think. This next encounter from Reddit was posted 6 months ago from Darwin Burr, Sir. I'm a cop. My zone partner and I park our patrol vehicles at the bottom of a long dirt road that leads to an abandoned school. We only do this on night shift when it starts to get slow at around 1 o'clock in the morning. It's a relatively safe place for us to catch up on paperwork or watch some YouTube. We have had several odd experiences there, from strange lights that maneuver quickly in the woods to possible UFO sightings. We even found a body down there years ago that still has not been identified. But that's not even the most terrifying. This was around October of 2020, around 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a dead night. Crime was low that time of year, partly because of COVID and partly because it was cold. We had parked our vehicles side by side, facing opposite directions so that the driver's side windows match up. This is common in our line of work. My partner gets dispatched to a noise complaint and leaves. I use this time to step out to relieve my bladder. As I'm standing outside, I hear a whistle in the woods that are across the abandoned school grounds. These woods are roughly 100 yards from where I'm parked. The whistle was a tune. It was a tune like it came from a human mouth, and it was oddly loud. We do have a homeless problem in my city, but not in the area that I patrol. But I assume a homeless person must have wandered their way to the south side of the city. I get back in my car and roll my windows up, anxiously awaiting my partner's return. My partner returns after about 20 minutes. I tell him the story and we move on to other topics. I'm a believer in the paranormal, but he is a skeptic. Within about 30 minutes, he decides that he needs to pee. So he steps out and walks to the rear of his patrol car. He's back there for roughly 5 seconds, and boom, we hear it again. A loud whistle to the tune of a slow song. The whistle lasts for maybe 10 seconds. He walks back to my window, and his face is a pale, milky white. So, as cops do, we decided to investigate. We grab our flashlights and start walking slowly through the field. That grass is up to our waist. We get to about halfway in the field when we hear it again. But this time, it sounds like it's coming from our right side, where the school is. As we're standing there with our flashlights shining on the school, we begin to see the grass start to move. There is no wind. The grass is not moving around us, and it looks like something is crawling in the field. The grass is moving slowly in a straight path towards us. We begin walking towards the movement. At this point, we both have our hands on our firearms. The air is eerily still, and you could see our breath from the cold. I can tell that my partner is uneasy. We are walking very slow and quiet. As we get about 20 feet away from the moving grass, it stops, and we hear the whistle, coming from exactly where our flashlights are shining on the now still grass. Now we are frozen in fear. We are too scared to speak to each other. It feels like minutes passed, but was probably only a few seconds. I go to take a step forward, and all of a sudden, the grass starts to move again. This time away from us towards the woodline. Only this time it's fast. Too fast for us to run after. So we just stand and watch. We watch as the moving grass reaches the woods. We both have our lights focused on it. And again, the whistle. Coming from the woods where the grass just stopped moving. Only this time, the whistle is quiet. This is the part that shocks us. We are now shining our lights into the woods. There are several large trees in our view. This thing stands up, but it looked like a child. But then again, not. It's hard to explain. Despite our lights shining directly onto the figure, it seemed amassed in darkness. Before we could even call out, it stepped behind a tree and was gone. We gathered up the courage to go after it. As we get to the tree, there's nothing. No footprints, no leaves crunching like you would expect to hear in autumn. It was like it vanished into nothing. We spent the next hour checking reports for missing children in the area, and we couldn't find anything. The creepiest part is that it must have been running on all fours when it was in the grass. We have a children's psychiatric hospital in the city, but they had no reports of escapees. To this day, we cannot explain it. And to this day, we continue to park there. 3 years have passed, and we have never had another experience like that. But my partner is now a believer, and everyone at the department thinks we're crazy. Pretty interesting encounters. I am glad that I was able to come to you this evening and bring these to you. I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon with more encounter stories. If you guys have an encounter that you would like either me or Wayne to read on here, send them to Wayne at paranormalworldproductions.com or myself, Tiffany at paranormalworldproductions.com, and we will be glad to read them to you. Thank you again for coming. And again, I hope that you all had a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year, and we'll talk soon.